Hi everyone, my name is Jordan Lubowitz. I'm a sophomore at the University of Texas at Austin and founding member of Our Campus United. I'm so excited to be here today interviewing Ben Berkowitz, the founder of global creative communications and marketing firm, Not a Billionaire, and co-author of award-winning comic book series, The Writer. Ben, it's a pleasure to have you here today. To start, I'd like to learn more about your company, Not a Billionaire. Can you share a bit more about it and take us back to the beginning of how it all started?
Yeah, no, it's I'm absolutely honored to be here, and thank you so much. Max and I, my brother, my co-founder, so we grew up in a family business. To those who are from Massachusetts or the New England area, Legal Seafoods. It was a big seafood restaurant chain. Our dad helped kind of build it from a fish market to a major restaurant chain. He launched the second restaurant in 1973, and I think in the first year it generated like 14 million in revenue, and that's significant in the 70s. There was a fallout between him and his family, and they actually teach the story in Harvard Business School in Brandeis. And so Max and I kind of going into family business maybe wasn't the smartest idea, but it kind of like strengthened our bond growing up. After school, I got into film production and marketing, theatrical publicity. I started at Sony Pictures and then Magnolia Pictures. And at Magnolia and Sony, I got to work on some incredible films, incredible documentaries. Searching for Sugar Man at Sony, which was an Oscar-winning film. And then at Magnolia Pictures, I worked on this documentary called Blackfish. We acquired it at Sundance, and we were like, it's a powerful film, it's made okay, but we'll see what it does. And then as soon as we made the announcement that we acquired the film, we received a lawsuit from SeaWorld because they did not like the information that was being released. It was about the mistreatment of the orca whales and the cover-up of several of the trainers' deaths. That rippled out throughout the industry. SeaWorld had forced them to change their whole business model, and I got to see firsthand how a film can impact not only one organization, but the world. So I made the jump from Magnolia to film production, and Max, he was in broadcast journalism, working for NBC Boston, Yes Network, ESPN, NH1 News, Nesson. I had just come off of a documentary, and Max and I had always wanted to get into storytelling. We wanted to make an impact with, our background. So we were like, what can we do? Well, we don't have $1 billion. And we were like, well, you don't have to be a billionaire to make a difference. So we launched our social impact production company and marketing agency in 2015. Our first client, which was wild, was the National Alzheimer's Association. And that was an organization that meant a great deal to us because our family had been hit significantly by Alzheimer's, 3 people in our family. And so it meant a great deal to work on their largest fundraising event of the year. We were tasked to create a 12-month social media campaign. We sent a memory athlete from the film I worked on up Mount Everest with a VR camera. He didn't summit. Maybe it was our fault because the camera was 40 pounds. And then we did a 24-hour live stream event at the Dolby Theater with some celebrities. And it ended up being the most money they had ever raised. And so that kind of skyrocketed our organization. And we started working with Fortune 100s, nonprofits, philanthropics, celebrities, influencers. And our goal was always to develop projects for film and TV. So that's kind of where we're at. That's awesome. The long-winded history.
Well, building a business in such a competitive industry is no small feat. And as a fellow entrepreneur, and for the many others listening today, you're a true inspiration as someone who's been able to navigate these challenges of being an entrepreneur. What piece of advice about entrepreneurship or life do you now know that you'd give to college students who don't know what they want to do in life, young people who want to start their own ventures, or even to your own younger self?
Max and I had, it's a great question. Max and I had the pleasure, non-pleasure of, early on seeing our father, who was, entrepreneurial in his own right, having to sort of reinvent himself late in life after Legal Seafoods. So we were able to see sort of like the ebbs and flows of success, see rejection, wins, failures, etc. So, we got that experience early on. And so we were able to kind of like build this. I know everyone says it, build a thick skin, being an entrepreneur. But, I think it's learning to really develop the ability to roll with rejection and failure and learning from those and being able to pivot and grow. And I think the other thing is like also learning to understand when to move on from a project. That has been a big learning curve for us, especially in this industry when you're developing, stories and projects, and every project we work on is a passion project. But, sometimes there's a point where you just have to learn to move away. We've learned, who are the types of people we want to work with, the types of personalities we want to work with. And it's just, it takes time to kind of like build that understanding. We've been doing this since 2015 and we're still learning. You figure out how to pivot, and you have to if you want to survive.
You are also the co-author of the comic book series, The Writer, with Dark Horse Comics, with your brother Max, and the notorious American actor, Josh Gad. Congratulations on that. Can you tell me a bit more about this series, what inspired you to create it, and what you want readers to take away from it?
As I was saying, like in the industry, it's like sometimes you'll have these passion projects that you develop for years, and then, it'll take forever to get them moving, But with this, Max and I were on the phone, of course, and we were seeing this terrible trend in Hollywood where comic book characters who identified as Jewish, as soon as they made the jump from the page to the screen, their Jewish identities were getting erased. Which is insane because Jews were the ones who pioneered the comic book industry in the first place. They had to take a job in this publishing that was for kids because they couldn't get jobs elsewhere. So we saw this trend and we were like, we need to put an end to this, or at least be a part of this trend to stop this. So we like literally overnight we came up with this concept of this character who had the power to write down any superpower, eat it, and temporarily gain that power. But we wanted to frame it in this like wholly Jewish story where the characters were Jewish, the framing of the plotting was Jewish. And so if this were to ever be developed as a film or any kind of adaptation, it would be impossible to remove that aspect of the story or these characters. When we were creating this pitch overnight, we remembered how vocal Josh had been in the fight against anti-Semitism and how he kind of was a superhero in his own right. He was inspiring like his own personal journey. His grandparents were Holocaust survivors, so we're like, he is the only person that can play this part that we will write this character around. So we literally created this pitch overnight, shot it off to his manager, Meredith Wechter, and both of them immediately got the concept right away, signed on, and sent the pitch out to Dark Horse. They bought into the project, and we co-wrote this thing together that ended up being this really beautiful homage to the people who built the industry, to storytelling, to the Jewish experience, and to fighting anti-Semitism. All 4 issues came out last year in 2024. The graphic novel came out this April. Now it's being developed into a feature film, which Awesome. We're very excited about. It's a beautiful, and like the artwork from Ariel Olivetti, he's a legend, is amazing. And like we were really blessed to get Mike Mignola to do a variant cover on the graphic novel. He's the creator of Hellboy. I've known him for years, and I had been a huge fan since childhood. It brought me to tears when he sent me his first sketch, seeing that. So it was amazing.
That's awesome. Well, I wanted to talk more about how you've done business with your brother, Max. I have a brother, and we don't always get along so well, and there's obviously issues that come up with that in doing business with your brother. I want to know, what challenges, if any, have there been with you and Max doing business together, and how have you guys been able to navigate that?
Yeah, I mean, like, brothers, we always fight. That's what we do, but at the end of the day, we always make sure to, it's kind of like a marriage where you never go to bed angry. At the end of every call, we always say, I love you. And that's like very important to us. We saw the relationship between our dad and his brothers and how it wasn't strong. Sorry if I get a little emotional. And so early on, we told ourselves that we would always be best friends no matter what. And we wouldn't let money or business get in the way of anything. So even if we're having a conflict around, a client to work with, cash flow or, any business decision, we make sure to work it out. And, being Jewish, it's all about arguing, So arguing is very important to the Jewish experience. So I think that's also like sort of a plus for us. We understand that we love each other at the end of the call, like helps us get through, these arguments. Yeah.
I love that. That's really sweet. Well, I know you talked a little bit about it in regards to Not a Billionaire, but I wanted to talk about some of the names that you guys have created for these businesses. Not a Billionaire, Dark Horse Comics, the writer. They're such bold names. I want to know what these names mean to you and what vision you're trying to set with these names.
Not a Billionaire was our company name that we created, and that was, again, the idea that you don't have to be a billionaire to make a difference. It doesn't help, and some of our clients are actual billionaires, and they do have an opinion over the name. And so Dark Horse is not ours; that's the publisher. The gentleman who founded that company, it was a similar kind of conceit that he saw this problem in comic books, how creators of these characters weren't getting any rights or royalties to their creations, and they were getting screwed out of a lot of money. I mean, a lot of money. And so he wanted to create a creator-owned company, the Dark Horse of the comic book industry, that celebrated these creators and gave them a significant profit share and the ownership of any derivative or adaptation that came about. And so working with them, a company like that, was incredibly important. The writer, words are vital to our Jewish community. The words have the power to create, to destroy, and so that was one aspect that was really important for us to convey in that book. And we're working on a book right now with the Lawrence brothers, Joey Lawrence, Matt Lawrence, and their younger brother Andy Lawrence. And although like that story may come off as just like a straight satire of like the 90s, it's really kind of a celebration of these actors who helped us all grow up. We watched them, we learned lessons with them. And so it's a celebration of them in that way. So the Lawrence Brothers Detective Agency, which we're so excited for people to read, is kind of honoring those actors and like, fortunately, pain they went through in this industry, because Hollywood is not friendly to child actors. So, we're kind of honoring them in that respect.
Yeah. I wanted to talk more about your Judaism, and I know you've been an advocate for Jewish representation on the board of the Jewish Film Institute and a national representative for BBYO. How has your Jewish identity sparked your work and shaped your work as a storyteller and an entrepreneur? And do you feel that storytellers and people in the industry have a responsibility that goes beyond entertainment?
I do. They always say, write what you know. And I don't think that means like directly, write your life onto the paper word for word. I think it's like taking, your experiences, how people talk, how they converse, how they work with each other, and how that influences, like, whether it's like subconscious or, consciously on the paper. But I'll admit, I wasn't as attuned with my Jewish identity up until I went to my first trip to Israel in 2012 on Birthright. And then I went on this amazing program through the Schusterman Foundation called Reality. It was a leadership program, and we got to go with 40 other people who, it was a mix of Jews and non-Jews. I think the majority of people were non-Jews. We got to kind of experience Israel, work through leadership experiences. We got to go to the West Bank at the time, talk with Palestinians. It was an eye-opening experience, and just kind of like, reaffirmed my connection to this beautiful, diverse, ethno-religious experience. Another factor that kind of like also just reaffirmed my connection. It was funny because I did 23andMe, and with the maternal haplogroup, it came up with this really rare maternal haplogroup that only like 1 in 1,200 23andMe, and like it's very rare amongst Ashkenazis, and it was able to kind of show the journey my ancestors on my maternal lineage kind of made from Africa all the way to the Levant into Europe, and how they remained Middle Eastern Jewish well past sort of like once they made it to Europe, even while in Europe, and then they kind of mixed. But it was just like, it was a fascinating, eye-opening to see how like our family was like part of every historical jump throughout history, and it's become important to kind of showcase our history, not just like the trauma, but like our Billionaire community, learning about how there are Indian Jews, Chinese Jews, Mizrahi. So just exploring and learning about those has been incredibly important to all the work that we've been doing.
Definitely. Well, I've never been to Israel, but I'm looking to go maybe this summer, and hopefully I get a fun experience like you have.
It was definitely, so Reality has now partnered with iTrek, and it's the friends that I've made, the connections, it's an incredible community. So if you're able to do that program or just go to Israel, I highly suggest it.
Definitely. Before we wrap up, I had one final question to you. To all of the people that are chasing success out of life, I ask you, how do you personally define success? And how has that definition changed since the beginning of your career?
Since the beginning of my career, I always thought I was going to have my big breakout film by the age of 26, like so many of those famous filmmakers. When I hit 26 and I wasn't there, I did hit this sort of like this wave of depression. It's like, you have all these people who are getting 30 under 30, all of this competition is out there. But once I sort of like got past that, and Max and I started to do things on our own, we started to realize that like success is determined by your own journey. The fact that we are over 10 years out from starting our company is a success. There were multiple times where, we may have shut down or should have shut down, but we didn't, because we were doing things that we love, even though, financials may have been hit dramatically, but we still push through. And so I think, one, seeing how much we've progressed is success. We've had these little successes here and there. We've gotten to work with incredible people, incredible organizations. And I think just seeing that every success we make, we then see that it's kind of starting over from zero again. And I think if you kind of like look at it from that, you're always going to be like moving forward with momentum. So I think it's just learning to appreciate all of the small successes.
Definitely. Well, thank you again for being here today. It's been a privilege to learn from your journey. I certainly learned a lot, and I think that the listeners are really going to like this one.
Oh, no, thank you so much, Jordan.